On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1965. We're going to be taking a look at Julie Andrews, and she's going to be performing The Sound of Music medley and My Fair Lady. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So let's get Julie up on screen and see how she gets on.
My heart wants to sing every song it hears. My heart wants to beat like the wings of the birds that rise from the lake to the trees. My heart wants to sigh like a chime that flies from a church on a breeze. To laugh like a brook when it trips and falls over stones on its way, to sing through the night like a lark who is learning to pray. I go the hills when my heart is lonely. I know I will hear what I've heard before. The sound of music, and I'll sing once more. Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things. Cream-colored ponies and crisp apple strudels, doorbells and sleigh bells and schnitzel with noodles, wild geese that fly with the moon on their wings. These are a few of my favorite things. Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes, snowflakes that stay on my nose and eyelashes, silver white winters that melt into springs. These are a few of my favorite things. When the dog bites, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad.
And there we have it. It's the kind of performance that you can't interrupt. I was thinking about it with about a minute to go, but this whole performance, the medley that we have stuck together here, takes you through every single aspect of Julie's voice and how amazing it was. By the way, believe it or not, Julie's voice is one of my childhood. My parents were and are heavily into the sound of music. So straight off the bat, I'm getting the guitar out just to give you guys a visual representation of the range that we're covering with Julie's voice in the first line of The Sound of Music, the first song that she's singing here. And if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you'll be used to me saying about the top singers how within a composition, they'll cover an octave throughout that composition, which will take you on such a journey and take you from a low position up to an effective peak of a mountain, emotionally and dramatically. That's what that achieves. So, taking the notes from The Sound of the Music, just the first line, we're starting on the C5 up to D5. And watch my finger here. So the first line, if you want the last two notes of that vocal phrase, we're starting, and for those of you that don't know about the guitar fretboard, up here we've got an octave, and when you play an open string, that is the octave below where you see those two dots. Going through those notes again. We've already covered an octave, which is something that usually takes a whole song to get through in one line of Julie Andrews' vocal. And the composition is so difficult to sing, let alone sing it this well, but it gives you an idea of the crazy ability we're talking about here. And some singers, when they go for the high note in their song that is an octave above where they're generally starting, they sometimes struggle to hit that note because the octave range is so vast. But here, Julie Andrews sings the song so easily and makes it look so easy that you never question the notes that are being sung. You're just appreciating the melody, the musicality, and the artistry of the performance. But once you start to break it down on an instrument, you realize how crazy the range is straight off the bat, and we're only one line into the song. Just while I got the guitar out, another line that spans an octave when we get into my favorite things. Again, it's just assumed that Julie's going to be able to sing this faultlessly, which she does, but we're starting on our A4, so it's going to be 6th fret of your high E string if you've got your guitar out, but we're going. So there, another octave being spanned with that vocal phrase, but again, it'll fly under the radar because of Julie's control, but also her tonal consistency. That is a massive part of it. In order to hit every single note in her range with the same sound, you'll often find that when a singer gets lower in their range, it can start to almost sound like they're struggling to get those low notes, and the tone changes in exactly the same way as when somebody tries to hit a high note in their range, their tone might change and sound squeezed or forced because it is at the top of their range, whereas keeping that whole range consistent throughout is what Julie could do, and having all of that range, by the way, 4 octaves, when we analyze it from that perspective vocally that she had, obviously here, it means that covering 1 octave with her voice is relatively easy for her. When I mention that range of 4 octaves and the fact that we've only got 1 octave between one note and the next in these vocal phrases, and saying that Julie found it easy, let me quantify that by saying this isn't easy, and Julie wouldn't have been able to do it with this consistency, this accuracy, and this control without a hell of a lot of practice. This is the culmination of loads of hard work, practice, solid practice for years and years and years, and natural talent, natural ability. It's the classic case that's happened millions of times where somebody will have a natural talent for something, but they won't put in the hard work. So they just rest on that talent and hope that they'll get to where they want to be from that talent. And you'll have somebody else who isn't as naturally talented, but They work every hour of every day to improve, and therefore they start to attain a higher level of performance and ability than the naturally talented person. When you get a case such as Julie Andrews, where she is so naturally talented but also puts in so much work, then it's the kind of voice, the kind of talent and hard work combination you only see once in a lifetime. And we know that she said herself in interviews that she will always be working. She'll always be doing something, whether it is or was singing, or whereas she's now writing all the time, being involved in movies, doing voiceovers. She is busy the whole time. She is working at something, and it's just part of her personality. So once you pair that with the original talent that she had, this is why it is a standalone voice. It's a standalone talent. I know that this is one of those videos that could go on for years because of the voice we're trying to put under the spotlight from an analytical perspective, but also the fact that I'm so familiar with Julie's voice from my childhood. Looking at her voice and the range that I've already mentioned, it's interesting the way in which Julie refers to her own voice, because she said that when she was young, it was thin and pure. Those are the two terms that she has used before. And it's interesting that she describes it as thin, because this is exactly how you need to look at your voice in order to increase your range and to have access to the highest notes in your range, full stop. Because what you'll find is that in chest voice, a lot of people see that as a thick sound, and it is a thick vocal cord coordination. So as you increase your range, as you increase in pitch, you have to thin out the sound. So she would automatically float up to these crazy pitches up high without necessarily thinking of taking the weight of chest voice with her. And that is something that does limit a lot of singers' ranges, taking chest voice up too high and not handing it off to head voice and getting into that thin, lighter vocal cord coordination. Something else I want to draw your attention to with Julie's vocal delivery is her enunciation. And of course, it's something prevalent with musical theatre because the audience have got to understand what the person is saying or singing because it relates to a wider story. So if the vocalist is modifying their vowels too severely, you can't really start to understand what the words are and you'll lose your place in the story. So it is so important. And I have cued the video to a section that not only shows that, but shows how Julie does modify her vowels, but does it in such a way that you always understand what she's saying, because she'll start with the vowel that she wants and the vowel modification that she wants in order to get the best sound and reach the notes most easily, but then will modify it at the end. And it is such a subtle technique. When it's done this well, you won't notice Julie's vowel modifications because they are so well applied. But let's have a little listen to this and hopefully you'll be able to spot it. I will stop it so that we will be able to see it more clearly.
Like a lark who is learning to pray. Oh.
And here we have it. That is so clearly an R vowel. R. You could also say that if you didn't know the word that Julie is about to sing and you had to guess which word it was going to be, you'd start with the R and you try and think of lots of words that started with R. But I'm going to play the video on a little bit more so we get to hear what Julie is actually singing. It was I. And this is the excellence and the application of the vowel modifications that Julie could do without you noticing it, because it definitely started with an R, and that's not how you say I. I is much more of a closed sound. It's more nasally. It's not ah, it's not open. But in order to get that note to sound this way, Julie applies that vowel modification. But it's so well done that nobody ever notices these really subtle vowel modifications that Julie applies, because they are so hard to spot. Even analyzing it, you're just watching it, you're appreciating the delivery vocally, the notes that she's hitting dead on all the time, the control of vibrato, all the different techniques, her enunciation. She is so clear with every word that she's singing. You don't notice. I know that we're looking at things in a lot of detail here, but just to look at the word I know that vocally here we're approaching it from an R position with our vowel, but if I was just to speak it, it's a great example of a word that has two vowels within it, because we start with I, and that's obviously saying it in super slow motion, but we go I. So it starts as quite a nasal sound, I. You're probably not used to looking at what you're saying in so much detail, but if Julie were to apply the second part of I too early, she'd have I. And going to the E really early will not only sound weird, but more importantly, it would place more strain on the vocal cords because it isn't as easy to sing that E vowel and get it to sound as round and full as Julie does when she approaches it from an I. And you'll notice how the E is right at the end. And something that Julie does so well is also include these talking elements within her singing and then snap back to pitch so that she's now back into the melodic components of the song. A great example of that is here, and I've just cued it to a particular point.
Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes, snowflakes that stay on my...
Listen to that word snowflakes, because Julie delivers that in such a way, she just throws her voice up there, but she's not trying to hit a note. If you want the note, it's a C5, but she's just delivering it like she's talking to somebody. It was another massive part of Julie's voice, being able to connect with everybody in the audience because of the way she delivered that vocal so accurately, but in little segments like that would throw a conversational quality to the vocal, even though she's still keeping it within the range that she's singing. So we've got the mastery here of so many vocal techniques, control of vibrato as well. Listen out for that, the frequency that Julie applies to that, the control, the breath support, the dynamic range of her voice, everything that I've mentioned about her range, full stop, covering those 4 octaves. And I think a lot of this wouldn't have been something that Julie worked at initially when she was a kid. She would have just been singing and just naturally doing things the right way. And it is something that Lillian Stiles Allen, who was a soprano and also tutored Julie when she was young, she said about Julie that she came to her with all of this range and such a great sound to her voice, the clarity of her tone that she could produce. So Julie already had these naturally occurring strong elements to her voice, but then once you start training classically with a classical tutor like Lillian, she can then take it to the next level and start teaching Julie about classical techniques, but also the whole control that's involved with that. I know that Julie said herself that she didn't really want to get heavily into the classical side of things to do with serious topics or minor-based compositions that took some of the melody lines and the whole compositions to a darker place. She wanted to keep it happy because that's what she thought her voice suited, and that's the direction that Julie went in. Another thing to mention about Julie is the fact that she is so humble because, like I said, this is a voice of a generation that you would only hear once in a generation if you're lucky, and it just so happened that Julie came along, but she sees it as just the person that was chosen to do these songs and to star in the films, not really understanding that she was a standalone vocalist, that nobody else could have done it this well or acted as well. And that's another part that we will get into in a future video. Her acting ability, such a wide skill set. Also on that, There was a recent re-recording or re-release of Mary Poppins with Emily Blunt. They totally redid the movie, and Julie was offered a cameo role in that film, but Julie turned it down because she didn't want to take any of the focus away from Emily Blunt and her performance in that film. So it really does give you a measure of the woman. Thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!